fuel wood in the ecosystem, and someday you will get a much bigger fire. If you let any and every fire burn, someone who can vote will lose. If you prevent any and every fire, you look smart, life goes on, predictably so, at least until it doesn't. Part of our inability to cope with complexity is that we're treating security as an end when it is not. Maybe we can get to a game we can win by changing the rules such that it is not security that is the goal state, but perhaps, say, reliability. Which leads me to recall Leslie Lamport's bon mot, a distributed system is one on which I cannot get any work done because some machine I have never heard of has crashed. I'll go one step further. Security for a mature industry is almost surely a subset of reliability, and that an insecure system won't be reliable, but that just being secure doesn't assure reliability. As most of you know, availability is formally measured as mean time between failures divided by the sum of mean time between failures plus mean time to repair. As such, there are two games you can play to get 100% availability. In one game, you do everything you can to force mean time between failures to infinity. In the other game, you do everything you can to force mean time to repair to 0. Infinite time between failures or 0 time to recover both yield 100% availability. The former, infinite MTBF, is a fine goal in and of itself, but at this point in history, we have put so many security products into our systems that the complexity of the sum of those security products has become itself part of the problem. If we look at nature in the form of the equations of ecology, we see two alternative games for survival as well, R selection and K selection. R-selected species produce many offspring, each of whom has a relatively low probability of surviving to adulthood. By contrast, K-selected species are strong competitors in crowded niches and invest more heavily in much fewer offspring, each of whom has a relatively high probability of reaching adulthood. If we change the term produce many offspring to re-image frequently, you now have precisely the advice that Microsoft's Dan Seglio gave when he said, in dealing with rootkits and advanced spyware programs, the only solution is to rebuild from scratch. In some cases, there's really no way to recover without nuking the systems from orbit. This brilliant remark is a direct, if inadvertent, suggestion that desktop machines tend to be R-selected. They need to die and be reborn often. If you are of a mind to invest in virtual machines, you may get R-selection as a side effect to whatever it is you're trying to do with VMs. My bacteriologist mentor taught me a further thing. The higher up the evolutionary ladder you go, the greater the percentage of the organism's total metabolic investment goes to self-protection, topping out with humankind's investment of 20 years to raise its children. Her thought, and now mine, is that since it is abundantly obvious that except for the people in this room, there are few computer users who are doubling their work output every 18 months, hence the dividend of Moore's law should be spent in increasing fractions on protecting the computer and the data it holds. My own company's product effectively suggests that you spend some of the 45,000x dividend that Moore's law has provided since the 1983 publication of the Orange Book on implementing the reference monitor, to take the example closest to my home. If we do somehow decide to do the kind of security metrics that are available to us at this early stage, they are likely to be trend metrics, since as a point of practice, a poor quality metric will still give useful trend data absent pathologic details that for the purpose of this talk I will ignore. Trend data, however, will never predict the black swan, the equilibrium punctuator, and so we have to mix our day-to-day efforts at prevention, which is to say lengthening mean time between failure, with preparation for fast recovery when all of our efforts at prevention are shown to have been a fool's errand, which is to say shortening the mean time to repair. Both in your consideration of security and in your consideration of God, remember that one cannot estimate the infinite with finite evidence. I trace the security industry as we know it today to one of those black swan events, but one in comparative slow motion compared to, say, the witty worm. Specifically, I trace the birth of the industry in which all of us here earn our paycheck to Microsoft's introduction of a TCP/IP stack as a freebie on the Windows platform. Besides putting FTP software out of business, a tactic followed so many times that I've literally lost count, the TCP/IP stack took an OS designed for a single owner-operator on a private net, if any net, and connected it to the world. Once that stack was installed, every sociopath was your next-door neighbor. And as such, we can point to that event as the birth of our industry. Had I chosen to do visual aids today, I would show you the sudden, one-time only, dramatic spike in the second derivative of the rate of attacks reported to the CERT that immediately followed the appearance of the TCP/IP stack on Windows. Note that I said a spike in the second derivative. Nothing much else happened for a while. But similarly, lighting the solid fuel on the space shuttle doesn't have any instantaneously visible effect either. The second of these moments occurred, as far as I can tell, about 24 months ago. Like the first, it was not a thunderbolt, more like a glacier finishing its slide across a riverbed and thus finally damming the waters. That moment was when our principal opponents changed over from adventurers and braggarts to professionals. In a sense, professionalization of the attack class is akin to virulence, in that the increasing immunity of computer systems forced an upgrade in the ability of the attacker to attack, i.e. finding vulnerabilities and exploiting them is now hard enough that it has moved out of the realm of being a hobby and into the realm of being a job. This changes several things, notably that hobbyists share their findings and are paid in bragging rights, whereas professionals do not share and are paid in something more substantial. Speaking biologically, a mutation towards strength on the part of the prey was matched by a mutation also towards strength on the part of the predator. As a side effect, the percentage of all vulnerabilities that are unknown has risen and will continue to rise. We have yet to reach the post-punctuation equilibrium in this case. This mutation towards strength represented by professionalization of the attack class was not a simple compensating match for increasing self-protection in the merchant operating systems. It went further, and it did so because, at least for the first world, the digital arena is now clearly where the opportunities are, such that when robbing banks, it is the amateur who uses a handgun and the professional who uses a bot. In the fall of 2006, I did some back-of-the-envelope calculations that resulted in a guess that 15 to 30% of all desktops had some degree of external control present. I got hate mail over that, but in the intervening months, VentSurf said 20 to 40, Microsoft guessed 2/3, IDG guessed 3/4. It doesn't matter who's right. What matters is that this changes a core feature of the ecosystem, and changing a core feature is the very definition of a punctuating event. In this case, it actually was not standing up a professional class of attackers any more than the first go-round. It was a spike in the second derivative of a reported attack rate. What it was, that a fundamental assumption of network security has been breached, and there's no putting it back together again. Ever since we did Kerberos, the idea that I'm okay and you're okay, but the big bad network in between us cannot be trusted for a second, authentication, authorization, and accountability, all of which began with authentication, have been essential. And in turn, the authentication begins by asking the operating system the name of the user. What has really changed, it is not true that I'm okay and you're okay, since it is entirely likely that the counterparty to whom you are connecting is already compromised. A secure network connection, who cares if the other end is hosed? Spafford was right, but way early when he likened network security as hiring an armored car to deliver gold bars from someone living in a cardboard box to someone living on a park bench. This is the new security situation that we're facing. What to do about owned counterparties? This is a today issue, not a tomorrow issue. The November 2006 10Q filing for E-Trade included a material loss due exactly to this problem, the first SEC filing of this sort to my knowledge. Owned machines